And welcome back to the Ineligibles podcast. I am Will Stone. He is Chase Caldwell. I'm on the wrong microphone, so let me fix that. There we go. Hope that sounds better.
Much better.
Yeah, I'm Will. He's Chase. He's Hayden. Boys, how we doing?
Doing well.
We all right. We
We
back.
Spring football is over, which is good because it means we're closer to football season. Bad because we don't see the team again for another 3-4 months until August. NFL draft coming up. That's kind of the last bit of football activity, really. I guess the NFL has like summer practices and whatnot and things of that sort. Maybe your fantasy drafts, will be here before too long. But, really it's getting into its draft, NBA, NHL playoffs, and then just a lot of baseball until August. But, hey, how about them Rangers? Number one in the West, baby.
There you go. I like baseball, but there's no way I could keep up with 162 games a year.
Yeah, no kidding. Makes me appreciate football even more. That it's just, it's once a week. It's appointment viewing, and you for 3 months out of the year, you spend the whole week just getting amped up for that day. Or if
No
you're
doubt.
me, I'm watching Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So just gearing up for all those days.
Yeah, and it makes you feel more of an elitist if you get tickets to the game.
That's true.
Like if you think about like
Scarcity.
how many millions of people have the option to get baseball tickets, but there's only like several 100,000 that could get football tickets. I don't know. Maybe there's millions of that and billions of the other.
Yeah.
Billions, eh?
1
billions
billion.
and billions and billions.
1
I was
billion.
gonna start elsewhere, but that sparked something else I was talking about yesterday with Brittany. And Billy Lucci brought this up on TechSags on Monday. But is it kind of weird to y'all, or like, does it affect you in any way that the A&M spring game typically draws around 7,000, between 7 and 10,000 people to the stadium, when you have teams like Oklahoma and Georgia and Ohio State get like 50 plus to their spring games?
50 plus thousand?
Yeah. Like Nebraska used to sell out their spring game every year, or like they'd have a full house. And like some of those other programs, they'll have, 50K plus show up to their spring game. And it's weird because A&M does extremely well with, actual football season attendance. Like we're probably number one in that, but for whatever reason, maybe it's ring day or.
I was about to say, yeah. So I can kind of speak to that. I would say from just my personal experience of it being parents' weekend every time.
Right.
We do a horrible job of trying to make that a big deal, because when you think about like the core cadets, that's whenever they do all of their, like, I don't know what they call it, but wherever like the freshmen become sophomores and sophomores become juniors and all of that. There's core people that might listen to this podcast later that would be just so irritated that I don't know the name of it, but it's like the final march or something like that.
Is that when seniors get their boots?
I think so. So. And it's like the last review, I think is what it's called.
Gotcha.
Final review. I think that's right.
Sounds
Man,
right.
I'm a terrible Aggie right here.
It's the final countdown.
But yeah, like that goes on, which is a big thing for the core. And then like inevitably I've never been able to go to both the spring game and crawfish boil for AGR. I have to choose one time every single year. And I've brought it up before of like, hey, we need to coordinate between them. And there just never seems to be enough interest between the two to where we've never coordinated those times. But I think we should probably make it more of a weekend where you do that. I think there's just so much going on at A&M on those weekends with ring dumps and ring day and all of that people don't really care about spring game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say the exact same thing. I mean, I went back to College Station. What was it, 2 weekends ago now for crawfish boil, and I was like, you know what, I want to see if I can try and make it to the spring game because I saw it was going on, and I was like, let's check the times. And I mean, sure enough, crawfish boil is smack dab right in the middle of it, so there's no way to even go to like half the game or anything. It's you gotta pick one or the other. And so I've never even been to a spring game.
Yeah.
I've only been
Because
to 2 crawfish bowls before because of that. Even
Well, and
when I
like,
was a student, I never could go because I always had to work the spring
yeah.
game.
And like, I remember the only one that was like of note was the year after Johnny won the Heisman, that spring game, because obviously we had all that excitement. I'm pretty sure like Herb Street and Musburger were calling our spring game. It was on ESPN, main channel, and that had a big turnout. But even that, I don't think was anywhere near 50,000. I bet it was like 20 something, like in the
Yeah.
20s of thousands, but not 50. Not there weren't people in the third deck, So,
I would definitely love for that to be more of a center point, but there again, a lot of the teams that you're talking about, they don't have something like we do with Ring Day,
right.
and so like they have the spring game for alumni to come back to. We have Ring Day and final review and all of Parents Weekend.
Right.
it's just
So.
a busy weekend overall, and that
Yeah.
definitely detracts from the spring game. The spring game's all just one of those things to do as opposed to the thing to do.
Yeah.
Right.
I think if you want to encourage that kind of turnout, I think you have to move it to a different weekend. Just
Yeah.
because, and I think, maybe a deterrent is that it's Ring Weekend and Parents Weekend. Like maybe if someone wants to go to the spring game, they don't want to put up with all the traffic of,
Yeah.
everyone's parents coming into town and things like that.
That too. I wonder if they wouldn't have a better turnout if they did it at like 7 p.m.
Yeah.
To where rings have been handed out, people are off campus, and things like crawfish boil and stuff like that haven't happened.
But then you have ring dunks though.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a direct conflict with your
True.
ring dunks. Then
Yeah, that's true.
I think you just have to scrap it from that weekend altogether and move it to be a standalone focal point of the weekend. I don't think that they're bringing anybody in for that. Like the people that do come in, they try and avoid all the traffic and everything, and
Yeah.
you bring in all the parents and alumni and everybody else, and it's almost more of a reason to not go into town.
Yeah.
You could also maybe do it on Friday or Sunday.
Friday's
Like
still ring dunks.
Friday afternoon. Yeah, true.
Yeah. I think a different weekend is probably the move, but the university really doesn't push it. Like it's like, hey, like there is a spring game, but like who gives a crap, But like if they wanted to, they could, really market it, make it like to where people are encouraged to tailgate, and things like that. But you can't tailgate and all that stuff if all the parking is taken for people getting their rings and such. So
again, I feel like if you ask the average Aggie, they would rather have Parents Weekend than they would the spring game.
Yeah.
Which I mean, I would be in that boat, but I still go to the spring game most every year. I haven't gone the last 2 years, but yeah.
But and my last thing on that is, they just redid Aggie Park. They spent all this money. Like, have some kind of concert or something out there. Like, have a reason for people to go, maybe besides football, and make it more of a family thing. But we need more people in the marketing department of our AD. I think maybe.
Yeah.
Just I don't know. It just kind of like it irks me that other schools can. Yeah, I think it's really just recruiting. Like they can bring a recruit in and be like, hey, like look at all these fans and blah blah blah, and we need to get that kid to hold off till the fall to see our real game day atmosphere. Like who cares about a spring game? Like when it matters, our fans show up. So
yeah, of course, in recent memory, that hasn't really deterred us. He commits in the spring, and then we get him out in the fall, and then he takes all of his posts down from his previous commitment.
Speaking of that, this kind of ties in with my next point of spring games at other other places, and like the football aspect, not the crowd aspect. But the second transfer window is open. I think it closes next week, but you've seen a bunch of kids go in here in the past probably 7 or 10 days or so. And you're probably going to keep seeing that until, next week. But a lot of options for other schools and a lot of options for A&M to maybe go pluck a guy here and there. I know the kid Buckner at Notre Dame. He was their starting QB for the first couple of games last season. Was probably running second or third this year. He's in the portal. Looking at Alabama, Colorado had like 18 or 20 guys enter in the past week, which is weird. Like, I don't know if you guys know, but ESPN only broadcasted one spring game on their main channel this spring, and it was Colorado's. And obviously the Dion factor there with like the excitement. They had a lot of fans show up, but I don't know why they're losing good players right now. So that's got to be troubling for Colorado fans, of which there are some, I'm sure. But like they had some nice moments in the spring game, but now they're seeing this kind of exodus of players going elsewhere. I don't know, but it's definitely. I do like that there's actual limits that, hey, we're like, hey, next Monday, for example, is like the last day to enter. After that, no more. Like, you're locked in until next season. So I do like that aspect, but there's still some movement to be had.
Yeah. When did you say it closes?
I think it's sometime next week, maybe next Monday, but sometime next week, I believe. Chase, you still with us?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
I keep disconnecting and reconnecting, so let's hope that doesn't keep up. But I'm here. I don't know exactly all of what you said. That's why I kind of paused, because I wasn't sure what to say back.
You're good. You're good.
But yeah, I've noticed a lot of uptick in transfers and commitments across the board. And I heard you say Dion, so I'm sure you mentioned Colorado and some of their transfers that they've had.
Yeah, that was kind of my main point, was like they actually showed some nice things in their spring game, but then on Monday, really all this week, there's been guys going in every day from Colorado. Yeah. So I don't really understand that, and that's probably pretty worrisome for them. But
I was definitely worried when Bobby Taylor hit the portal, but I saw that he's back out of it, huh?
Came back, yeah. And I think, just from reading the tea leaves at other sites, I think we're good on anybody else leaving. The other recent one was Matthew Wyckoff. He entered it like maybe 3-4 weeks ago. So he is leaving, but Bobby entered, came back out. He's going to stay. And I was kind of worried about our scholarship numbers, because we were like in the starting to get towards the low 70s there, but they actually went and got a couple of pickups from the portal. They got a corner from Boston College, Josh DeBerry, and then J.D. Davis, linebacker from Jackson State. So two veterans at need spots, and then that just adds to your depth and to your roster. So they're sitting at 76, which is decent. That's fine. The cap is 85, but I think they'll probably add some more, like maybe get closer to 80, somewhere in there, but shouldn't be any issue with not having enough scholarship players going into the season.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to see us pick up another guy or two.
I certainly would, and there were some names that were out there that I know they're interested in, and that guys that have visited. But now there's this second window of even more guys going in, so maybe they hold off and they're like, oh, like, let's wait and see who all does enter, and then maybe pick our spots after that and not rush into it. But I know for one, earlier today, Caleb Burton the receiver from he was from Lake Travis and signed with Ohio State in the 2022 class that A&M did so well in, but he's transferring from Ohio State. It's tough to be a receiver up there. Like, you've got to be the best of the best to hang in that room, and he's probably still a fine player. So if he wants to get back closer to home, I hope A&M takes a look at him.
Yeah. Well, especially because I feel like receiver somewhere that we could still very much benefit from picking up somebody.
Yeah,
and linebacker for that matter.
yeah,
Both of those are areas of concern for me, and that goes into the spring game, which is the topic of conversation today. One of my biggest takeaways from the spring game, we have good receiver play. Definitely looks like, no surprise here, that Evan Stewart is going to be really carrying our team in a lot of ways at the receiver spot. But not that we had poor play from the others, because of course Anaya Smith is Anaya Smith. He's going to be a great player for us. I was really impressed by what's his name? I even wrote his name down. Let me see if I can find it.
Was it Micah?
Micah, thank you.
Micah Teese.
Yeah, I couldn't remember his first name. I guess I could have just said Teese, but I was impressed by him in a lot of ways. He really showed off. I mean, you got to take everything with a grain of salt when you're watching a spring game, of course.
Yeah.
But you will have a couple guys that kind of stand out, and you also have to weigh those options. Is this a walk-on
right
that's out there playing against the second team offense, and he's a walk-on corner that got one interception? Okay, that's probably not anybody to build your team around, I guess.
Yeah.
But Micah really, really impressed me a couple different times throughout the game.
Yeah.
Evan Stewart, it was just one of those. The connection between Evan, or I don't know, he just kind of reminds me of Mike Evans in a way. If you want to say not Mike Evans, I'm doing a terrible job explaining this right now. But if you look at the connection between Johnny and Mike, and I'm not necessarily saying that these two are going to be that, but Wigman and Evan Stewart, some of the throws that you saw between the two were very reminiscent of what you would have seen between Johnny and Mike. Not a one-to-one comparison. It's just we're going to throw it up, and I'm going to take more dangerous throws towards you, and you're going to make those catches.
I think there's something to that. Like, when things start to break down, Connor's just going to go, hey, I'm going to find number one and just throw it his direction and see if he can make a play on it. And he probably will, because he's got a knack for doing that. Like, I know it's a spring game, but like, it just built upon what we saw all last season when he was healthy. He's really damn good, and he's probably set to be one of the best receivers in the SEC, if not in the country this year, and especially with Connor feeding him the ball, which is probably going to happen. So
right. And thank you for putting my thoughts into words for me, because that's exactly what I was trying to say. Do I expect him to look identical to them? Do I expect Wigman to be a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback like Johnny? No. Do I expect that Evan Stewart is going to be the next Mike Evans? No, but the connection between the two, it gives your quarterback, in times of everything breaking down, somebody that he can throw that ball to, and a big play come out of nowhere. Whenever it shouldn't have, whenever you should have been sacked on the play, you scramble out, you throw it up, and then everybody's left going, what? Wait, how did that happen? That was awesome. So that's more so what I saw a couple different times.
I remember there were so many times with Mike where like the play would happen, you just shake your head and just be like, "How did he make that happen?"
Exactly.
Like how did he make that player come down with that ball? And like Evan, obviously, different kind of player, but just he's got that same, that same talent and ability.
Right.
Obviously, no Moose Muhammad, who really came on at the end of last year. Really bummed about Noah Thomas getting hurt on the first drive. Um, Love me some Bryce Anderson, but come on, buddy, like don't be taking your own guys' heads off in a spring game. But hey, he's just got that dog in him. But
That was my thoughts exactly. That's always my thought when I'm watching a spring game is, come on,
Yeah.
what's going on here?
But apparently, by all accounts, Noah really showed out this spring. He's got the Mike Evans build. From Galveston. 6'6", probably 205 or so. Was the spring offensive MVP that they hand those out at halftime or whatever. So he must have really impressed to garner those kind of accolades and things like that. But wish we could have seen more of him. Anais had the yellow jersey. He still made some plays here and there. I kept getting him and Damani mixed up because they're both in yellow and like they're often in the same area of the field, and, things like that. But
Yeah.
All in all, not the sharpest or cleanest or prettiest display of quarterback play. I thought Max did some nice things. Jimbo didn't come out and name Connor the starter, even though we're pretty sure he's going to start. But man, it's so huge to keep Max on this team and have him as that safety net.
Yeah, I'm not going to say I was not impressed by Max. I was impressed by Max as a second string quarterback.
Yeah.
I was looking at him as like, man, he's one of the best second strings we've had in a long time. Well, I say that after coming off last year when we had two really good ones, but my takeaway, I saw Max do a lot of things I wouldn't want my quarterback to do. There was several times where he's rolling off to the right and he's throwing, with no power in his arm across the ball or across the field, and just really kind of emergency plays that shouldn't have been made. Just go down or get you 2 yards out of the play. I don't want to see that in a spring game. Right. If you're going to do that in a spring game, you're going to do it in a game for sure. And so that's one of the things that's kind of hard. Definitely my takeaway from, I think I've seen a lot of people kind of put down what they saw of Wigman during that game. I didn't. What I was watching, I was seeing a Wigman that isn't a true Wigman. It's kind of like watching Johnny or any of those types of quarterbacks in that setting where they almost look boring.
Yeah.
Because they're making nice, good reads. They're not extending the play or anything like that. But you can't during a game like that. You really shouldn't during a game like that because somebody like Wigman that might be able to get free and shake somebody or whatever, the play is going to be called dead before you're even able to do that in a spring game because they don't want your quarterback getting hit. And so I think what I would say to that is I hope that he makes a lot of those good decisions in the actual game scenario and not be a run first quarterback. Right.
Yeah.
I thought he did show a little bit of mobility in there though.
He did. He absolutely. We know he has it. There's no doubt about him having it. For me, it's more of, okay, during the spring game, I want to see the really good, thoughtful plays of let's pretend as if you weren't mobile. What would your reads and your progressions be, and work through those without having to sprint for your life, And I thought he did a really good job at that. Did he make the best throws and all of that? Not necessarily, but that's where you could attribute that to say, okay, here's a guy that has he's got a governor put on him to where he
Yeah.
can't run full speed and throw the ball like he normally would. He's supposed to sit back and make those plays. Can he still make them? And he did. And so it's good to see. It's good to see that from him, even though it wasn't the absolute best game he's ever played. No, it's not going to be, because again, he can't make half of the plays that he would normally make. So if he can exhibit in a setting like that he would still be a good quarterback, that means that he could become a great quarterback whenever he's free to do whatever he does, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I think on a couple of those zone reads, he may not take one to the house, but he's definitely getting some good chunk yardage
For
if
sure.
if he's not down just by getting touched,
When there was a couple times that the play was blown up, where
Yeah, for sure.
he goes over here and there's no, it was a miscommunication. The running back's going to the left, he's going to the right, running back's not there. In a game scenario, he's going to get 4 yards because he's going to just sprint real quick and grab a couple yards, slide and get on to the next play instead of having to stand there and think, what do I do now, right? And that's where his instinct would kick in to, I got to sprint with this ball,
Yeah. So that part may not seem like super significant, but I feel like once he got into games last year, like he kind of had trouble like finding his footing on when he tried to scramble.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was like slipping and sliding quite a bit, and like looked a little, like almost clumsy at times. And I'm like, man, like this is not the guy that I saw just like tearing people up in high school, scoring 8 touchdowns in that one game that we watched on ESPN.
Mm-hmm.
But like, true freshman under the lights for the first time. The season and team are in shambles, and we turned to our 18-year-old quarterback like, hey, please help us.
Right.
So I thought, he definitely showed some of the old Connor with his athleticism and his mobility. Also, like his completion percentage wasn't great. I think 17 out of 40, so a little bit under 50%. But there were some balls on the money that the receivers just couldn't haul in. There was a pass in the end zone that hit Evan in the face and just bounced off his face mask.
Yeah.
And just like it's a spring game. Like they're not going to be looking like the Chiefs in a spring game.
Right.
But I thought some of the things like him throwing the ball, different arm angles, different putting touch on certain passes or pulling the trigger on some others. His overall accuracy and ball placement, I thought was pretty good. And to lead into a different point about the offense itself, there's Petrino's fingerprints on what they showed. And they even said like, hey, we're not going to show a lot. Like, I mean, like, the players have talked all spring about, hey, we're doing, more pre-snap motion. We're moving faster. We're snapping the ball quicker, and things like that. But there was a few little things here and there. Like there was a couple of plays where you could just tell, like, hey, this was drawn up to be super easy. And like a few passes to Evan were like, hey, like we're going to scheme Evan open right here and get, 7-8 yards out of it. But also I thought the biggest thing was the running game difference. Pulling guards, pulling tackles, pulling centers and tackles, pulling tight ends. Like there was so much more. Like last year it was just, inside zone, outside zone, just block who's in front of you. And this was, so different. And that's kind of Petrino's calling card. And, we have the guys to execute that. I love all 3 of the running backs. I thought they all looked good. I hated to see Moss get hurt there because he was looking, pretty tough when he was in there.
Well, that was my biggest takeaway as well, is how good the running game was. I was very impressed. Where I don't know if this is a good thing or bad thing. I took it away as a good thing, but there was times where I couldn't tell which running back was in. Right. Because they all just seemed to be at the same caliber all the time. And that's really good from my perspective of, well, there's no drop off there. It's 3 guys that look identical. I guess the bad part of that would be that they're kind of one dimensional. Maybe they're all very similar backs, but I would say I would lean more on the positive side on that one. I'm just acknowledging that there could be some oversight that I'm seeing, but I was just looking at it from the standpoint of, man, they look really clean and they look really tough. All of them just kept moving their feet, driving the line, getting 2 or 3 more yards out of
Yeah.
each play, and I was very impressed with the run game.
And there's a couple times when like it was a pass play and things kind of broke down, and Ruben Owens is right there for a little dump off,
Yeah.
and you get a first down out of that. Like little things like that are just so big. And like when you look back on the disaster that last year was, like nothing was sharp or crisp, and like there was never a plan B. It felt like hey, if this
Sure.
play gets blown up, like we're screwed. like we don't know what else we're gonna do. And I felt like there was like the backs were just so impressive, and you got 3 good ones. I like what I saw at Crown Over. I always have, and
Yeah.
he doesn't get talked about in that same vein, but to kind of pile onto that, you saw us go under center quite a bit, which Jimbo's done that in the past, but hasn't really as of late, at least at A&M the past few years. But you put Crown over there at fullback, that dude's a football player now. Like he's gonna get in there and he's gonna lead block for you, and
Yeah.
like going under center and then running play action off that and going deep. Like those are some Petrino staples that prove to me like, hey, this isn't just Jimbo's offense dressed up a little bit. Like it's like this is Petrino doing what he wants to do, and it makes me that much more excited to see on September 2nd what they start doing in real football games.
Yeah. Me too. That was a big takeaway for me was the changes that I saw. You already mentioned the different blocking schemes that we had on offense, but just I don't know. I don't want to say this in a way that detracts from the past couple of years because I think we've done this to some degree. But it just seemed like the offense is designed around the players that we have for their skill set. Crownover is a perfect example of that. How many times did we run him? We just would replace Devon A-Chain with him. Well, that's a completely different style of running back, and you're trying to force feed them into the same plays, and it doesn't work that way. Where it seems like he's a natural fit for the fullback position, which I would have to run the tape back, but surely we used him in that position enough last year anyways. But
Yeah.
it just seemed like all of the plays were designed around the players that we had and less around here's the play. I don't care if you're good at it or not, you're going to run it, and that's what at least for the past 2 or 3 years in Jimbo's offense, that's the way I've felt. I've felt like we've just been trying to cram a round peg into a square hole and just kept on going because that's Jimbo's offense and we got to run it, and you're going to run it until you're good at it instead of
you need to
let's
execute.
look at what we're good at and then run that. Right.
Yeah. It's all about execution,
Yeah.
And I thought, or I think that the offense just needs more easy buttons, like, hey, it's 3rd and 6, what play we're going to run. Like, let's make it easy on your, like, don't make your quarterback sit back there and do rocket science on 3rd and 6. Like,
right.
draw up something easy for him to, find one of your badass receivers wide open somewhere. And I'm certainly excited about that. But
or have enough confidence in your run game whenever you're on the 2-yard line to beat Alabama to just hand the ball off and dive into the end zone. But
that's a whole other thing. Is I've seen some people say that Petrino's biggest thing is like preparing a game plan for specific opponents and knowing how to attack defenses. And I don't want to dive too far into that because I'm not an expert, but that sounds exciting as hell. And not just what's our offense, we're going to run it. Like, no, like they have a weakness at X, Y, and Z. We're going to exploit that with our with our strengths, kind of thing.
I think Les Miles was always good at that. You
Yeah.
watch those LSU teams at the beginning of our time in the SEC, and they would always look completely different versus the different teams that they were playing, and in some ways, I really like that because I don't like the whole idea of, oh, it's a faceless opponent and blah 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 blah, because that's just coach speak. And you get in the locker room, they're not actually talking like that. Now you'll have, it's kind of the same way, like once you become an adult, all these people that really love the like self-help books and like all of that, where it's like, be where your feet are. Okay, great. That's really life changing for me to know, like, yeah, I just need to be present in my everyday life. But you get some of those people that's like, they hear that and then they'll just reciprocate it. And don't get me wrong, to some people that stuff really works. To me, I'm like, yeah, that's stupid. That does absolutely nothing to change my everyday life. And so you're going to have a little bit of both on any kind of football team, where you're going to have some guys that are really motivated by, oh, it's just a faceless opponent. And you'll have other guys that's like, yeah, it's a faceless opponent that's Alabama. And we just got through playing the faceless opponent of Lamar University.
Yeah.
It's like there's a
New
vast difference
Mexico.
between those two.
Yeah.
And so I think to some degree it's good to have that, because what ends up happening is you hear, oh yeah, it's a faceless opponent. We're gonna play our game and then we're gonna make them play us and blah 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 blah. And then you beat Florida and Jimbo's out there like, yeah, screw the Gators, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
faceless opponent, really,
He doesn't care at all, does he?
yeah, you don't care who the opponent is, but whenever you're really fighting for us to be in the college football playoff, then you're going to be like, we played the best team and we lost against the best team in football with the best players in football, and how can't you're going to discredit us for that? Come on now. Okay, what happened to Alabama being faceless?
Yeah.
So
I'm glad my mic was off when you said that thing about your feet and your shoes or whatever. 'Cause I almost covered this microphone in my drink. But yeah, I mean, cosign like 100% on that. I do want to get to the O-line a little bit. Like, you had some guys out. Obviously, Bryce is doing track stuff. Ruben was not available, but you had some young guys in there. Mark Naboo, second-year player, played, I think, every position from left tackle to right tackle, both guards, and played center. He's looking promising. Cam Dewberry, Remington Strickland. I was super impressed with the young freshman, Chase Pasantis. He's a guy that I've always been a fan of. I think we talked about him on our last show, but he's a guy I'll reiterate here. If he's not picked in the NFL draft in 3 or 4 years, I'll be very surprised. But he's got that ready-made strength and that nasty demeanor. You want your O-line to kind of be pricks. Like, you don't want a bunch of nice guys on your O-line. You want guys that want to drive their opponents into the ground and just physically kick their butts. And he's got that demeanor, and he's got the ability to back it up. And he wasn't perfect. He got some he lost some battles to Shamar Turner, who's a guy we'll talk about here in a second. But I thought all in all, I think my key thing, in addition to the different schemes and things like that, is just the competence. Like,
yeah,
there was very few like misses or like just completely blown assignments or just completely getting whipped. Like obviously Walter Nolan, he's coming into his own. He looks like a bull in a china shop out there. There's not a lot of guys like that you're going to be playing against. So it's okay if you lose a few reps against a guy of that caliber. But even then, like, they gave him some trouble too.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said that I'm admittedly not an offensive line expert, which is why I love that you're on the podcast, because you are. But The biggest thing to me that whenever I was looking back at last year and really maybe the year before too, um, when I'm looking at an offensive line is for it to be clean and not just penalty after penalty after penalty, you know, whether it's holding or false start. I I saw at the beginning of the game, I think it was like the first 3 or 4 plays, somebody jumped early.
Yeah.
Now they only called it once, but somebody jumped early the first like 4 or 5 plays.
Well, it couldn't go back any farther.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, guys, let's figure this out. I think as the game went on, you saw less and less of that,
Yeah.
which is partially to be expected, right? Guys that are out there and they haven't been in that environment for a while, but that's something that I really hope that we work out this year. Again, I think it got better as the game went on, but when you look back at our 2020 offense, our offensive line, there wasn't just a whole lot of penalties. There
Yeah.
wasn't a whole lot of holding penalties. There wasn't a whole lot of false starts, and that's where we really need to get to. Again, there's probably scheme or there's definitely scheme and stuff like that that needs to be improved on. I'm just not the one to speak to that, but I can speak to a guy jumping early, you know,
Yeah.
and so um, that's what I'm hoping to see
Yeah.
going into this year is that we have a lot more disciplined play.
Yeah. I think, I was talking to Austin about this the other day, but, in 2019, that was the first year that we had Josh Henson, and the O-line was not very good that
Mhm.
season. And, second year, a lot of veterans on the O-line. They were a finalist for the Joe Moore Award, top 3 O-line in college football. And like they were the story of the season. Like without that group, we don't go 9-1. We don't win an Orange Bowl. And, I'm hoping that, second year of Adazio will bring a similar, result, hopefully.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
and you didn't lose anybody off last year's squad. I mean, I guess you lost Wyckoff, but if you listen to the, Romans coming out, he probably would have been behind, obviously Bryce Foster, and probably behind Mark Naboo as well, who's really coming on. So, not to discredit him in any way, but we've got some nice young players on the O line, and I thought Demetrius Crownover did some nice things. He's still probably a year or two away. The other guy, Colton Thomason, early enrollee, this kid was like in 10th grade, he was like 6'8" and like 400 pounds, and worked his butt off to get down to like 325, and looks incredible out there. And he took some lumps. Like obviously, he's blocking some premier defensive ends, but he did some nice things. I think there's something to work with there at tackle. But to get to my favorite position group on this football team, this defensive line is just it's filthy. I mean,
Yeah.
I thought last year, most of these guys were true freshmen. They looked like big puppies out there that would have flashes of dominance, and then not know what they were doing on the next play. And it's tough, to like LT Overton should have been in high school last year, and he played like 500 snaps for us on defense. Like it's just it's not a normal thing. So I think getting those guys into their second year, I thought like Walter was just so impressive. Not just playing well in the interior, like there were some times where he would just explode off the ball, get into the center and extend those arms and just tear things up in the middle. But when they do stunts and run him around the outside, like he moves like an end on the edge, and like that's going to be so dangerous for opposing offenses. But the main guy I want to praise is Shamar Turner, and he's going into his third year, was a 5-star coming out, and I thought last year, I think they tried to bulk him up and play him inside, which is like what we all kind of thought they would do. But then the year went on, and we're like, hey, like all of our ends are 18 years old. We need an older guy playing in for us, and he had to play some in, but he was training for tackle, and I think he's been committed to reshaping his body to be an end, and he looks terrific.
Yeah.
I think him and Fadil Diggs are probably your starters at end, but I think Shamar's going to be a good one. Like he's so powerful and explosive. He's even got some pass rush moves now. There was one, I think it was in the second half of the spring game. He put a nasty spin move on Basantis. Like he had no idea where he was. Like he just went just like boom right around him, and yeah, that was filthy. So, and maybe the best one, McKinley Jackson didn't even play. So this is a loaded group. I mean, there's so many names there. We could talk for 30 minutes on those guys alone, but super promising to. It was demoralizing for me for the run defense to be so bad last year, and I think that gets fixed right away this year with this defensive line.
I hope it does, and I'm confident that it will. It's just linebacker kind of worries me on that. Just at the numbers that we have is mainly why. I do think that we have some good talent at linebacker, but it's just so thin in terms of numbers that worries me, and you just I don't know. You maybe I'm just going off of recent memory over the last 2 seasons when we were just plagued with injuries. Maybe this year we won't. Hopefully we won't, right? But it kind of goes back to what I was saying about Evan Stewart. Evan Stewart's going to be a phenomenal player and going to do really, really good things for our offense, assuming he never gets hurt. And I hope that he doesn't. I hope nobody ever gets hurt. That's my hope always, but it is part of football, and that's going to happen. And so I just want to see that if we rely really heavy on our D-line for that run defense, that's great. We just need to keep our linebackers heavy.
Yeah.
Or healthy. I'm sorry, not heavy.
Or both.
So, yeah, heavy and healthy. But that's where I would say leading into our secondary, or at least our defensive backs, I think we've got a really good set of defensive backs that the pairing between our really filthy D-line and our really good senior-led, DBs, I think we don't have to rely on linebackers as heavy. And so I would point to, is it the 2020 season, when Buddy Johnson was just one of everybody's favorite players, and
That's my guy.
he just was the best. If you look at how thin we were that year, we were ultra thin, and I was very worried about linebacker that year, and was mainly worried like he's got to stay healthy this whole year, and he did. But
yeah,
we didn't have to rely on linebacker as much, and there was a vast difference from a lot of the Chavis teams and the teams of the past where we had really good edge rushers and no real good D linemen, and we were just going through linebackers like nobody's business because we relied on them so heavy for our run defense. So it might be kind of sounding negative, but it's actually a positive from my viewpoint of, because our D line is so good and because our DBs should be so good, hopefully we won't have to rely on linebackers so much so that they get injured all the time.
Yeah.
And then if we can keep the group of linebackers that we have healthy, yeah, we're going to have a really good defense.
Yeah. Well, and I think the biggest question mark on the team maybe for me is, I think O-line is kind of a question mark. Like we've seen most of those guys play well. They just need to do it all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But with linebacker, like Cooper is such a playmaker, and there's times where he's, looks like an All-American, and times where, maybe gets a little bit lost. Mm-hmm. I feel like we don't have that Buddy Johnson who just, is in on every play and is making every tackle. Um, and Chris Russell, this is his like 5th year, I think. So, maybe it's his turn to be the guy in the middle and lead the defense. But it's the one position, maybe outside of O-line and quarterback, that I hate playing freshmen at linebacker because they get hurt, they tear their shoulders up, and it messes up their development, and I hate doing it. But
Mhm.
the 2 freshmen looked really, really good. Torian York and Damian Sanford, especially York, but I think really both of them looked very promising. York kind of reminds me of Buddy Johnson, like kind of a shorter, compact guy, but I think he's your future Mike. That's just like he's probably a coach's favorite player. Like he's super smart, and like he can diagnose and figure things out super quick. Just he's just young, and he's probably needs to bulk up a little bit, but I think you've got 5 guys that are at least capable to some degree. They went and got the transfer from Jackson State at linebacker, J.D.
Mhm.
Davis. So that helps you. He's an older guy.
sure.
He's played a lot of football, so that's excellent for depth and whatnot. But on the back end, man, I'll tell you one thing: the whole country needs to know the name Bryce Anderson, because he's probably going to be a first-round draft pick in a couple years. And I loved Antonio. I loved Antonio Johnson. I think he's awesome, and I think Bryce could be better than him. He's so quick, and he's so he's got the mentality of a guy who's just a badass football player. I mean, like he played quarterback in high school, so it was really hard to scout him. Like you're like, oh, this is a great athlete, but can he play defense? But
Right.
playing quarterback, probably his whole life, prepared him even more. Like he knows how defenses or how offenses are designed, and how to he uses that to his advantage on defense, and he just plays so fast and so physical. I think he's primed for a breakout year this fall. And I keep forgetting we have Damani back. Like
Yeah.
this is
How
his
did you
fifth,
forget that?
this is his 5th year as a starter. Like, I mean, that's freaking awesome to get a guy like that back on your team. That's so valuable.
Yeah.
You know,
And he's got that mentality. That's where I think both him and Ananias, having them on both sides of the ball is huge, because both of those are like the super loyal players that really love their team and are going to do whatever they can for their team.
yeah,
And those are the types of seniors that you want leading the team. Not all seniors are going to be created equal, right? But both of them have been starters from day one, and they're both guys that are just ultra smart, love the game, but they're also not selfish. They're not
yeah,
selfish players who want it all for themselves. They're very team oriented, and that's a really good benefit for us to have.
yeah.
Um,
As far as cornerback goes, your top 2 guys, probably didn't see playing time, like they were, out with injuries, or I think Chappelle had like some personal issues that caused him to miss some practice, and so he wasn't he wasn't available to play in the spring game because he missed so much time. But I think Chappelle is awesome. I think he's a guy that could go early, or like he could declare after this year. He might not. He may come back for senior year, but he's got he's that level of player to where he could do that with a big year. And then I'm so excited to see Tony Grimes. Like we've been recruiting him for like 10 years, it feels like.
Yeah.
I remember like, oh, there's a 5-star corner from Virginia somewhere that we might get, and he's visited 100 times, and then he goes somewhere else. And but he's here now. I think he's kind of locked up that starting spot opposite Chappelle. Sam McCall did some decent things in the spring game, but you still got a couple freshmen coming in: Javon Thomas, Bravion Rogers, Bobby Taylor. I think he was probably doing the portal thing already, so he missed the spring game, but now he's back. So he might be a guy that can help you from a depth standpoint. I think they probably go and try to find at least one more defensive back somewhere, but
I think we need to,
yeah,
because really, and this kind of plays into what I was saying on linebacker. If our offense plays quicker and we play a faster, looser type of offense, the defense is going to be on the field a lot more. So then we're going to have more depth and more talent at defense than we have in recent memory, which we do. We've got the talent, but do we have the depth is the question. And
yeah,
so both at corner and linebacker, I think that's important. I wouldn't be opposed to take another safety too, So
yeah,
just to where you could switch those guys out, give your main guys rest during games that you're up quite a bit, or the lower level games that we'll have. I think it would be important for us to continue to develop that depth through the transfer portal as much as we can, and go from there.
yeah. And we don't have to get into the Aggies in the draft too much here at the end of the show, but um, I think it's interesting that the only 3 starters that we lost from last year's team are all going to be drafted into the NFL. So, but that's literally all we lost to the NFL or graduation was just 3 guys. Like we had like no seniors last year. The seniors that we had decided to come back in Anais and Damani. So it's such a weird predicament to be in, but I think the talent was there last year. I think the experience and talent will be there this year.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know, I'm not going to fall victim to what I've done the last 2 off seasons where I just, whip myself into a frenzy over how good we're going to be. But I will say this, this schedule is very, very interesting to me, primarily because I think Alabama hates their quarterbacks. And I don't think they're shy about that. They've tried to get multiple quarterbacks to transfer there and have not had success. I think they're probably going to end up getting that kid from Notre Dame. He's okay, but they may have the worst quarterback play they've had in like 8 years, maybe more than that, maybe like since like '08 or something. But like the days of like the guy that plays for them this year that starts for them, it's not going to be a first round pick. I can tell you that right now. It's not going to be Bryce Young or Tua or even Jalen Hurts. Like I'm sure they'll be effective. They'll be a good player, but man, Bama, I just don't know. That early game against Texas, I hate to say it, that game is very interesting. um, but we've got all summer to get into those kind of topics. But
For sure.
Anything else from you guys before we get out of here?
I don't think so. Next time we can cover the draft, start looking forward at the season, and maybe start breaking down the team a little bit and seeing what to expect where.
Yeah, and hopefully have some news of some transfers coming into the program, which I think they're going to do. Yeah, I think whenever we talked to Robert last, we thought maybe three guys, 4 guys. They've already got 2. They may, I don't know, that they may get 3 or 4 more in addition. So like, I mean, in this day and age, you got to play the game. Like, why handicap yourself and play with a hand behind your back when you can go get a DB from a Power 5 program to come in and be on your team. So
For sure.
We'll keep you all up to date on all that stuff. Good luck to all the Aggies getting drafted this week. For the love of God, Eagles do not draft Devon Achane anywhere but there. And I'll buy me an Achane jersey, but it can't be the Eagles. Anybody else? It'll probably be the Chiefs, knowing them. But yeah, that's it for us. He is the minister of mustache. He is Chase Patton Caldwell. The logo covers my name. I don't have one. We're the Ineligibles. We'll see you next time. Thanks so much.